Hi, I'm David Shuck, and welcome to Blowout, the Heddle show where we explore one thing, whether that's watch caps, flip-flops, backpacks, or what have you, and tell you all about why it's important, where it came from, how it's made, who's making them today, how to take care of it, and the real reason you're here. A few fun facts to give you an unearned sense of authority the next time the topic comes up in conversation. Today we are talking polarization. And no, I'm not talking about the bears, Santa Claus, or the state of global politics. Rather, something a bit more anodyne and seasonally appropriate. Cool shades. Sunglasses. You may have heard the many benefits of polarized sunglasses, like how they reduce glare, let you see through the surface of water, or make it easier to drive. But why? How? Where? It's a thing that isn't really explored all that much for consumers of how polarization works. There's a lot of technical information and different quality of materials and a lot of things that just really aren't that apparent for consumers to figure out. But listen on, and you'll soon be an expert on all things polarized on this episode. So there's some definitional things to get out of the way first. Polarization isn't like a t-shirt where it's immediately self-evident what we're talking about. We need to put on our physics caps for a minute to understand some of the concepts that are happening here that make polarization happen and what it does. So let's get into some basic light theory here first. So most light sources, like say a candle or a light bulb or the sun, produce light in all directions. So it radiates out like 360 degrees all over the place in a bunch of wavy lines going in every direction coming out from the light source. So when it hits other things like rocks or trees or people, an even amount of light bounces off of them and reflects to your eye. That's normal vision. So you're having an equal amount of it goes from the source to hit the thing, to bounce off of it, and then is captured by your eye. But if all of those light beams hit something uniform and reflective, like a lake or the hood of a car or a glacier or that asshole Tyler Branson's watch in ninth grade geography class, just to name a few, they don't bounce back in a bunch of different directions. They line up together in the same direction to form a much more concentrated and blinding beam of light, which we experience as glare. So it just sort of takes all of the light and it makes it additive. So this is why reflective glare of a light source can often seem brighter than just looking at it directly. The glare focuses it all back at you rather than it being sort of an even amount coming from the light source. So it doesn't matter how much UV protection your shades have, the glare is going to bust right through and it's going to make your eyes water and be really uncomfortable. But polarization is this genius little invention that prevents one direction of light from passing through a lens, so you can just turn off a lot of the sources of glare. And usually sunglasses manufacturers choose to block out horizontal light waves, because that's the most common source of glare off of horizontal surfaces, like we mentioned, like bodies of water, bodies of cars, bodies of roadways, glaciers, things of that nature. It's usually going to be hitting the horizontal surface and then bouncing right back to mess up your eyes. This doesn't mean that you can't see those things through polarized lenses. There's still lots and lots of light reflecting off of every object that will make it through polarized lenses, just not the one specific direction where it glares. So it just cuts down, sort of like a high pass filter of like that one direction of light is not going to come through nearly as brightly. But otherwise, you experience it pretty much the same. So, how did we get this miracle invention that takes a lot of brain power to even conceptualize? Well, let me tell you about a man named Edwin H. Land, who you probably have never heard of, but he should be remembered with the same reverence as like Archimedes, Da Vinci, Tesla, among all the other great inventors. He died with some 535 patents to his name, which is second only to Thomas Edison, and he did it all with only a high school diploma. So let me take you back to the year 1928, we've got a 19-year-old Edwin Land just dropped out of Harvard University his freshman year after growing frustrated with the hierarchies of academia and his inability to pursue his own research. He wanted to work on light polarization, but as a freshman, yeah, you have to take the basics classes and then work your way up, and then maybe, just maybe, if you can do a senior thesis or something, or go on to a postgraduate degree where you get to do those things. But Land is like, I don't have time for that. I want to do this right now. I'm 19 years old. So he dropped out and moved to New York City, where he did his own research at the public library during the day, and he snuck into the labs at Columbia University at night to use their equipment. So light polarization was already a known concept at the time, but there wasn't a cost-effective way to manufacture the filters, and Land thought that he could figure it out. With all of his research, like the way that people typically synthesized light polarization, like crystals in a lab at the time, was to make a single large polarizing crystal, sort of like, a big prism or something, like the Dark Side of the Moon Pink Floyd cover. And that would be the way that you could polarize light, but it wasn't really all that effective for any other concepts outside of a lab. But through his research at the library and breaking and entering into the Columbia University labs, Land discovered a way to grow millions of tiny, tiny micron-sized crystals and align them all on a thin piece of plastic celluloid film so they all work together. So rather than having to focus the light through one big crystal, he was able to make this thin little piece of film where everything could pass through these equally oriented crystals to make everything polarized. So this new method, it was cheap, it was fast, and it made for thin and effective filters, which had never been done before for anything polarized. So he was able to commercialize this, and he started a new company based on the polarized celluloid, which, guess what he called it? Polaroid. Polarized celluloid becomes Polaroid. Yes, it is the same Polaroid because Edwin Land would later invent the instant film camera in the late 1940s. But the first applications of polarized celluloid were to fight glare, like we talked about. Like on sunglasses or train car windows, it was very popular to be used there. But it would eventually have dozens and dozens of uses, like 3D movies, color animation, to control brightness on windows. Like, I don't know if you've seen that on newer airplane windows that don't have the little, like, window slide thing. The cover, it's just like this button that slowly gets brighter and darker. That's polarization. It also works on LCD screens, so even if you don't wear sunglasses, you probably interact with at least a dozen polarized filters every day. So you can thank Dr. Land, but even though he's not actually a doctor because he only graduated from high school, but they still called him Dr. Land. I don't know. If you have 500 patents, I think you can have people call you whatever you want. But even if you don't wear polarized sunglasses already, here are some reasons why you might want to. As mentioned, polarized lenses drastically reduce glare, so if you don't like looking at glare or you have eye strain or headaches, you might want to give them a try. For specific applications, like fishermen are probably the biggest supporters of polarized lenses because they take the reflection off of the surface of water so you can more easily see where all the fish are. Oh, instead of seeing, like the sun or whatever light reflecting back, there's a bunch of videos you can see of like someone putting polarized lenses in front of a camera and just instantly you can see all the fish under the water. If you're driving a car, it's also really handy because it cuts the glare off of the road surface. And other cars, as mentioned, cars are very shiny, they're very bright, lots of chrome. The polarizing filters will cut that out. It's kind of debatable for snow sports as they reduce the reflection off of frozen surfaces, but when you reduce that glare, it can make it more difficult to distinguish between ice and snow in something like backcountry skiing or something like that. The only other potential downsides of polarized lenses is that they're orientation specific. So if you tilt your head to the left and right while wearing them, you can see things sort of get brighter and darker as the filter adjusts with your surroundings. So it can be like a little disorienting at first, but you get used to it very easily. And also, I mentioned the tech is used in LCD screens, so you might not be able to read them without tilting your head on some older, cheaper displays. Like the effects of both of the polarized filters will kind of block each other out. Like I have a very old car and the clock on it, if I turn my head, it just turns completely black on the little digital gauge. But that's only only for like much older LCD screens, like your phone or a computer, all that's fine. But by that same token of like double polarization, airplane pilots aren't supposed to wear polarized lenses because most airplane windshields are already polarized and you could get the same effect. The other thing is they're a little bit more expensive than non-polarized versions of the same sunglasses. So it's generally like, I don't know, about 10% more expensive if there's a polarized option. But all that said, I love them. I have only worn polarized sunglasses for probably 15 years now, and it is all I will wear for the future. Not being blinded by glare is pretty nice. I would recommend it. If you've never tried them, yeah, there's lots of places where you can test it out and see if it's for you. But if you want to try your own pair, I do have a few words of advice before recommending specific brands. The first is that not all polarized lenses are created equal or made out of the same material. One thing to take away from this is that if you want to get some polarized sunglasses, you're going to want to spend at least $100 on a pair, or else you will probably get more trouble from the cheap polarized lenses than you would get from the benefit. Polarizing filters can be made out of a variety of materials, and the cheapest and thinnest one is called triacetate cellulose, or TAC. You see a lot of brands refer to it as that. And you don't want to get this confused with cellulose acetate, which is a material for sunglasses frames. That's totally fine and completely different. There's nothing wrong with cellulose acetate frames. This is triacetate cellulose lenses, and TAC can deform easily and become delaminated from the lens filters if it gets wet and making everything blurry. So typically, like when you have a construction of a polarized lens on a sunglass, you have it sandwiched between the UV filters. So it goes like the outer one, the polarizing filter in the middle, and then another one, and they're laminated together. The TAC is done usually with water soluble glue. So if you get it wet, they can delaminate and it can be not nice for your eyes. It can make it like things really distorted. TAC will also shrink during the lamination process, so manufacturers usually cut their TAC lenses a bit too big to make sure that it fits, but then it compresses so it can sort of distort the optics of the lens. You know, like when you look into a spoon or something like that, is the lenses are designed to be shaped in such a way that it doesn't distort what you're seeing, but if you squeeze it, it'll sort of make things either too convex or too concave. So if you want to buy polarized sunglasses, make sure the polarizing filters in the lenses are made out of either glass, nylon, or CR39 plastic. Those are the ones that reputable brands typically use. And most brands over $100 will probably use one of those, but like also make sure. Any reputable brand will tell you what their polarizing filters are made out of. And if they don't, just assume it's TAC and you shouldn't want to buy it. But all of those have much better performance than TAC, better visual fidelity, and will last a lot longer. And one other thing that you might want to spend a little bit more on polarized glasses in general is that, as I said, like they have an axis on the polarization. So like it's doing it horizontally generally for most sunglasses. But if you have a manufacturer that doesn't care as much, they might not take the effort to make sure both of those axes on each individual lens are lined up. So you can have them a little bit off kilter, which just makes the experience really, really kind of unpleasant. Higher end brands will go to the effort of lining those up and making it as like not disorienting as possible. A good pair of polarized sunglasses should feel totally normal, just like you're putting on a regular pair of sunglasses. A cheap or poorly made one will feel kind of weird, and that can lead to more eye strain, headache, weird stuff than you would get. So that's why I recommend, like, if you're going to get some, go for a good maker. Otherwise, you're just sort of wasting your money. So all this is to say, if you don't want to spend more than $100 on a pair of sunglasses, don't buy polarized. The cheap stuff will likely be a worse experience than your basic pair of gas station sunglasses. But if you are ready to spend, here are a few options. First up is Serengeti. So this company was founded in the 1980s by the Corning Glass Company. If you're familiar with glass work whatsoever, like Corning is something that you're probably intimately familiar with. Corning was founded in Corning, New York, and they've been operating since the 1880s and were the inventors of borosilicate glass, which you might know as Pyrex. It can handle extreme temperature changes without breaking or deforming. And Serengeti was their line of sunglasses to use polarized borosilicate glass lenses. They've changed ownership a few times since being founded in the 80s and are now owned by the Bollé Group, but they remain at the forefront in quality and tech for a lot of polarized lenses. They are still all made out of glass on their lenses, and they are manufactured in Italy. Polarized options for Serengeti start at about 200 bucks. The next one I would recommend is Shinzo Tamura. So this is the sunglasses line developed by Japanese polarized lens manufacturer Talex. And Talex is headed by their CEO named Shinzo Tamura, named the sunglass line after himself, who is the third generation of Tamuras to head the company. And we had our correspondent Todd tour the factory in Osaka last year, and their manufacturing standards are insane. It is extremely intense, and like all the unique processes that they've developed over about the last 100 years producing lenses. They make everything in house. They've had like most of their workers have been there for at least 20 years. They match up all of their lenses by hand to make sure that they're the most accurate to each other when they're placed in sunglasses. They use CR39 filters, and Talex only makes polarized lenses. Like, they literally don't make anything else. So all Shinzo Tamura sunglasses are polarized. I have a pair of their Namba lightweight sunglasses, and I really love them. The visual fidelity is really extraordinary compared to most any other sunglasses I've tried on. I only have one gripe, is that they have these silicone nose pads to reduce slippage, which work really great. You will not have to push these up your nose as you wear them. But if you are like me and you rest these sunglasses like on top of your head for even half a second, they will get caught in your hair and you will lose at least one strand of hair, like trying to get them out of your head. That said, I would think they are worth it, and I'm still a big fan. They start at 180 bucks, so it's a pretty good deal from a all in-house Japanese made pair of sunglasses. Next up is American Optical, and with a name that basic, you know that they are very old, and they started in Connecticut almost 200 years ago, and they've been producing glasses in the United States pretty much continuously since 1827. They developed the original aviator sunglasses frame and produced thousands, like hundreds of thousands of them for the military in World War II. And they were also JFK's favorite sunglasses. That they have a model that you might mistake for the Ray-Ban Wayfarer, but it's called the Saratoga, and I believe it predates the Wayfarer. They still make a lot of the same designs from the 1950s, and they use both glass and nylon polarizing filters. And their polarized options start at about 250. Finally, we've got Randolph Engineering, which was birthed from a disgruntled employee of American Optical named Jan Waskiewicz, who was a Polish immigrant engineer who worked at American Optical and became very dissatisfied, thinking that their process was subpar. It was not technical enough for him. So in 1972, he and another partner founded the company in Randolph, Massachusetts. And in 1978, they started winning contracts for military sunglasses and beating out American Optical. And they have this really, really intense, ridiculous, like patented 200-step production process, which is all done still in-house in Randolph, Massachusetts. They even produce their own solder. This is how insane Randolph Engineering goes, that they developed their own specific solder that they use on all of their sunglasses, and they have a specific guarantee for the lifetime of every solder joint on all sunglasses. They only started being available for the general public in the 90s. It was exclusively for government contracts before then. They're on the pricier side. Their polarized options start at about 300 bucks. Taking care of sunglasses, pretty straightforward. Just don't scratch them, don't break them, which is simple in concept, much more difficult in practice. So most quality sunglasses manufacturers will allow you to replace the lenses if they get scratched or broken for significantly less cost than going for a new pair. So if you get your lenses scratched up, don't feel like you have to replace the entire pair of sunglasses. It's sort of like, higher end footwear you can resole, higher end sunglasses you can put new lenses in. So if you have them scratched up, like, look to contact the manufacturer. They should be able to help you out with replacing the lenses. But the frames, like, I've sort of accepted that I break a pair of sunglasses by sitting on them about once every 3 to 5 years. It is just a fact of life that I'm going to forget that I have them in a pocket, or I will accidentally put them on the seat of my car, and crack, I have to buy a new pair. But even though I do burn through sunglasses at that rate, I still see the value in dropping a few $100 on them because I use them literally every single day. And still, even the most expensive pair of sunglasses is cheaper than new eyes or, anything else regarding your eye in terms of health. So just put your sunglasses in a case when you can and try to rub them with something cleaner than a t-shirt, and they should last, at least as long as you need them to get the benefit of them. So that is about the long and short of polarized lenses. Thank you for sticking with me to the end here. I hope you have not found this episode too polarizing. Yuck, yuck, yuck. All the brands I talked about are linked in the show notes if you want to learn more about them. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, want to suggest a topic, or just pump your favorite sunglasses, please drop us a line at blowout@heddles.com. Today's episode featured writing from Polarized Sunglasses, How Do They Work? By me, Randolph Engineering, History, Philosophy, and Iconic Products by Albert Muskies, and American Optical, History, Philosophy, and Iconic Products by John Bobby. All of those are on heddles.com if you want to read more about those brands, and it also had the production talents of Mr. Sean Thornton. So thank you very much for listening, and until next time, keep it real and keep it raw. Bye-bye.